I think that Jeff sees Herbert's obsession with Dan as asexual. It's more of
Oh,
like
100%.
whether it's like love or whether it's just like a mindless sort of obsessive. The phrase that Dan uses in the first Reanimator movie to describe Dr. Hill, where he says that Dr. Hill has projected a pathological need onto Meg.
Yeah.
That sounds like Herbert.
100%. Yeah, I think in Jeff's mind, it's like everything that Herbert surrounds himself with. It's like it's he only like he sees people as like pawns and like the ways that he can use people. So Dan is the most convenient person for him to use, and like he's the one who's most on board with his shit all the time compared to literally everyone else. So I don't. And I think he kind of shares I'm sure you've seen this too, like that Brian Yuzna like Instagram story when they asked about Bride of Reanimator being homoerotic, and he was like, well, he doesn't really have much sexuality, but where that's within him is, I guess, through like how he's jealous of Dan and like the way he interacts with him with all the women in his life and stuff. But that it's not sexual. It's just, again, I guess goes back to, he said like science being sex to him, which is like crazy to say, which just means then it's still gay, because then it's like two dudes still doing it. It's like science is sex to him, which is why he only does it with men, and why he gets really annoyed when women get involved in the science, because he's like, no, it's only between me and this guy who's like hunky and has had his shirt off all the time. And I watch him with his shirt off, and I get like really mad when he like spends any other time with any other person, even within his own like, no, it's a metaphor. It's like it's still gay.
Well, yeah, the entire basis of Bride of Reanimator is, two men creating life. It's
without women.
It's not subtle. It's not subtle. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it is also your classic monster flick. It's us. It's it's all part of woke left culture that we're always trying to find subtext in things where it's not there, because we want everything to be gay.
I have the woke mind virus that makes me like Reanimator. Like that's what I have. That's why I see this. That was my favorite thing about the Joe Bob Briggs interview at Last Drive-In, was because like literally he's like, hey Jeffrey, so nice to see you. I noticed you have a cowboy hat on. What's that about? And then like the very next question that actually has to do with the movie is like, so you guys are like bro best friends, huh? And you still live together. What's that all about? Like this, like there's no other conversation, no like background on the movie, no like it's just immediately into like, so you got a little gay with it this time. Let's discuss. And he's like immediately fighting for his life. Like Jeffrey Combs there's like a target on his head. He's like, absolutely not. It's not what we did. It's incredible. I really do recommend everyone to seek that out if they haven't already.
Well, Raine, welcome to Reanimates.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad to finally talk to you, because you're really funny on Twitter.
That's such an honor. Thank you so much for that. It's a cesspool out there, so I try my best.
Well, it's one of those things where your tweets and sort of things about like Jeff and Reanimator and stuff. They're very funny. They're very funny to me, and they're funny sort of because I know that like jokes about this not super mainstream film, it's quite niche, which I think always tends to make things a bit funnier when it's like, not everyone will get this joke, but 10 people will really love it.
Oh, absolutely. The micro celebrityism of the Jeffrey Combs universe on Twitter.com. It's a very niche crowd.
I mean, if there's one thing that I learned doing the Jeffrey Combs Film Festival, I was just always surprised at how many people like didn't know who Jeffrey Combs was, not because they like don't like watch horror movies or something, but just because like they just don't like think of actors. Like, how some people are like, oh, I just watch whatever movies and I don't particularly like look for certain actors or certain directors. I just watch like they don't have. It's almost like they don't have preferences.
Oh, 100%. It's like, and this is like not their fault, but like, I mean, Jeffrey Combs is like a perfect example of an actor who's just been completely shafted by the way that Hollywood values horror. Because if we're really talking like objectively here, like I think even like most film fans in general, not just horror fans, would say that Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West is one of the best performances in horror, but that doesn't hold any like true value within acting as like an entire like the film history of acting. Like he's not brought up in other discussions normally, which is a bit crazy. So it's like he's not like as a character actor, and for people to know, we all know that he's like one of the best to do it. He can be in a completely garbage movie, such as perhaps the one we'll be talking about today, and he'll be like, and he'll be like the best part of the movie. He always gives 100% every. That's all I'll say about him. I never seen him phone in a performance, and yet he's never in any kind of conversation about like great acting, even sometimes in just horror in general, which is strange because it's an iconic performance. And when you probe people more on that, they will be like, oh yeah, he's great. But like you said, like they don't immediately know who he is, and you kind of and then from at least my experience, people will start connect the dots and be like, oh, he's like 20 characters in Star Trek. He's like in this and this. And they're like, oh yeah. But
it's the classic idea of character actors, really, where it's like, oh, that guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess maybe Bruce Campbell's kind of the ultimate example because that one's just like truly crazy. He even has like the Hollywood looks, and they didn't even like try. Like Hollywood didn't even know what to do with Bruce Campbell. Like truly, I had no idea.
Crazy.
Which is like,
crazy.
Yeah, that's a huge L on their part. They fumbled that real bad. But
it's just so bizarre. Like Bruce Campbell especially. It's like he looks like a 40s matinee idol.
Yes.
Like, because a lot of like character actors, they might not be like conventionally good looking, or they might be a bit odd looking, whatever, who cares?
Right.
But they're brilliant actors. Bruce Campbell had the combination of being like a really good actor and really funny and talented, while also being incredibly conventionally attractive.
He could have been a rom-com star. Like he could have been like I think he could have serious and like screwball comedies and shit. Like that could have been like his whole. Not to say he hasn't had a good career, obviously. I just mean like mainstream wise, it's like he's only known for Evil Dead for the most part, and it's like crazy because he's very good as well, obviously. But
well, I sort of compare him to someone like Cary Grant because he's like incredibly attractive, very charming. Also has like this weird vaudeville element of him, like when you watch 100%. Evil Dead and stuff. Like he's always like Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead, not Cary Grant in Evil Dead. I smell an AI project in the wings. He's always doing these weird flips and insane physical shit. He's, like super talented. And then it's like, well, I guess you go down different paths, like Jeff, I guess, did the same thing where he tried a bunch of different things and then just sort of like ended up in the horror niche.
But you just think like even like a film like Reanimator in terms of like obviously like I mean it was at cons, but like to the level of like even if it's a kind of an underground horror movie, like he was I mean everyone from the start, like even like big reviewers knew that he was like the best part of that movie. So you think that would have any sort of credibility in like larger Hollywood, but like it doesn't, because horror is just even within like even like prestige horror, like elevated horror, whatever the fuck you want to call it, like even that's not really like credited in like the Academy Awards or something like that. So God for like something as perverted as Reanimator is never going to be considered anything like highbrow. But I do want to say, going back real fast, I want to share a really autistic revelation that I had that I don't think I've ever shared with anyone. So this is an exclusive for Reanimates, because there's I don't think anyone else would have ever clocked this, because I was watching some Evil Dead documentary, I don't know, and they were talking about it was like someone behind the scenes was talking about how Bruce Campbell is one of the best like actors to act in reverse because of all the scenes that they shoot in reverse of him, like doing his like flipping around and all that shit. And I specifically had a little brain burst moment because in what was that? There's that Reanimator documentary, Reanimator Resurrectus. In that documentary, there's a person who says like Jeffrey Combs is one of the best like reverse actors that they've ever had, because when they're doing the intestine scene, that's all in reverse. Obviously, they're throwing it on him and they just reversed it. So all I'm saying is that they have very similar skill sets, and they're considered the best of the best in a very niche category. And they still have not been in a film together. I just find that very interesting, Yeah,
I think that in particular is really weird that Bruce Campbell and Jeffrey Combs never did and have still not done a film together. Like maybe it's because, well, they don't even really occupy the same sort of space in a film, because like they're both obviously like weirdos, but they're obviously different in different ways. Jeff has done films with other sort of like, beloved character actors, like like he did Wizard of Gore, I think, with Brad Dourif, Night of the Living Dead 3D with Andrew Divoff.
Classic.
So like,
but like, where's like the Tubi original even? Like, I'm not asking for anything crazy. I'm just saying, like, why is this not? It's just it's obscene at this point, and no one in Hollywood's like, maybe just do the obvious and pair these two together for like anything.
Yeah.
And it has never happened. I remember there's one time a couple of years ago, there was like a Bruce Campbell roast, and originally Jeffrey Combs was on the roster, and I was like, fuck yes, now's the time. The library is now open. He's gonna win this. I'm never, as much as I love Jeffrey Combs and stuff, like I'm always making fun of him. Me on Twitter, I'm like his number one enemy in terms of like making fun of him. So but I was completely like, he's gonna win this. He's gonna be the best one there. And then he had to drop out for some reason. I've never been so devastated. I'm like, that was like he had it in the bag. I would put all my money on that. Like,
I haven't seen that. That sounds really fun. So it's a roast of Bruce Campbell with like other character actors and stuff.
One day, perhaps. Anyway.
I mean, look, as fun as it is imagining what could have been, today we're talking about what was.
Yes.
so we're covering Dead Man Walking from 1988. You said when I approached you about this that you had a soft spot for this movie. My question is why?
Well, you have to always remember like the Jeffrey Combs kind of like brain rot syndrome, where like if I was talking to literally anyone else, I would not claim to like this film. And like, is it good? No, I don't think so. A big reason why I got into Jeffrey Combs, other than like liking Stuart Gordon stuff, is that I'm a big fan of like best of the worst type movies. Like I love that kind of schlocky 80s movie, and Jeffrey Combs is in so many of those types of movies. So that's why I kind of got deeper into him than just surface level, like being a Reanimator fan, is because I'm totally into that niche. So a movie like Dead Man Walking isn't too crazy to me, given like, again, I've seen like the worst of the worst that the 80s has given us. So like this is pretty higher mid-tier echelon stuff, for what it is. I appreciate like the Verhoeven type like weird satire that doesn't always work. I like how there's like 3 character actors that star in this, and I think it's very funny that Jeffrey Combs is not even close to top billed. I think that's funny.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting is like it's not super horror-y. Like it's definitely going for more of like the action sci-fi, like Total Recall, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although a lot less fun.
Yes, a lot less budget too. They did get the guy from RoboCop though. I don't know if you clock that. The guy who is one of the news reporters in the film. I mean, that's obviously like that's just directly ripped off of RoboCop, but that's the exact same guy from RoboCop too.
Oh,
so
I didn't recognize.
He's in all of them. Yeah. He's Casey Wong is his name in RoboCop, but yeah, they just straight up ripped that off. But I'm fine with that because I love RoboCop. So I'm like, we'll let that slide. That's good.
It's an homage,
Exactly. It's not blatant ripoff.
So the basic premise, for those who haven't seen it, is it's your classic dystopian wasteland world in which a plague-infected man and a chauffeur have to team up to get back the chauffeur's boss's daughter, who was kidnapped by, quote unquote, the infected. I did do, well, not a deep dive, but a semi, a shallow dive. I did a big dive and I hit the floor on Gregory Dark, who was the director. Fascinating, like meander through his career. So he started in porn, as many of the greats do. In the early 80s, as part of a creative duo called the Dark Brothers, he and Walter Gernert. One of the films that I saw on there, obviously I haven't watched it, called Black Throat. So the premise is Roscoe, a typical white guy. What does typical mean? I don't know. Finds a card saying Madame Mambo's House of Divine Inspiration through Fellatio. Along with his pet talking rubber rat, Mr. Bob, and a new age pimp named Jamal, the 3 look to find Madame Mambo and go through an odyssey of sexual rendezvous.
That's amazing. I don't know if you heard me gasp there, but I have a revelation to make, which is that I've done mild research on Gregory Dark myself. I had no idea that Madame Mambo is a recurring character in his pornography
Ah,
oeuvre. That is shocking to me.
wow. I mean,
Yeah.
it's good to have a through line, you know.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a good character, you gotta stick with it, right?
So it seems like he ain't gonna use the money from some of the more successful pornos to make like straight films, like Dead Man Walking. And as far as I can tell, Dead Man Walking is the first film in his oeuvre that is not like a porno.
And like, that's the American dream, isn't it? Like you make enough porno films, and one day you can make a real movie like Dead Man Walking.
Yeah.
What an achievement!
And who's to say which film has left more of a mark on pop culture,
Right.
Black Throat or Dead Man Walking? Who's to say?
Yeah, new wave hookers. Like it's a big filmography.
What follows in the 90s of Gregory Dark's career is like a bit more porn, but mostly R-rated erotic thrillers, and he becomes known as the undisputed king of the direct-to-video erotic thriller. And then someone else called him the Steven Spielberg of the softcore set. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then it gets to the late 90s, like pretty much like turn of the century, and he starts doing music videos. He does Sublime, Ice Cube Exhibit, and then by like 99, he's doing like Britney and Mandy Moore. And then eventually 18s.
Yeah, like technically a Disney thing because it was Lilo and Stitch. That was the song.
Yeah.
What a creative, like what a vast career. It's truly respectable. We really have to put respect on this pornographer's name. He really has done a lot for the culture. Like
he has probably literally, but mostly figuratively put his finger in a lot of pies.
Exactly.
And if anyone's interested, I did get some of this info from a book I found on Google Books, so I assume it's free to read, called The Erotic Thriller in Contemporary Cinema by Linda Ruth Williams, which I will link on the social, and I will also read because it looks interesting. This is not erotic though at all. I was surprised that a low-budget film by a pornographer did not have any tits in it at all,
which is crazy because so much of this movie is in like weird S&M like masochist like bars. Like that's like half the movie is like flimsy bar sets where like if Jeffrey Combs, the smallest man in the world, even like slightly touches them, they shake rapid like insanely. So like that's what we're working with here. So you really think they'd be like, oh man, like we're it's getting a little dull here. Let's put some breasts in the barrel here. But they never do that. It's bizarre. Yeah. It's like all dudes here for the most part, which is kind of crazy. And like I said, like some higher echelon character actors here. So I mean that's great. We have Brian James, I think, and Wings Hauser. So that's huge.
I didn't know who Wings Hauser was, but he is very much like a Dolph Lundgren looking type, I think. Yeah, he's like strong face. Like, on the Brian Thompson to Dolph Lundgren pipeline, he is somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely. He kind of has on, funnily enough, Rutger Hauer's outfit in like The Hitcher. I noticed that while watching. I'm like, this is like the exact same outfit.
Well, their IMDb states that Wings and Rutger Hauer were friends.
Oh, well, there you go. He's like, can I borrow your outfit? I have to do this movie.
So, written by Rick Marks and John Widener. Rick Marks's IMDb is so devoid of anything interesting that under the did you know, it just says nickname Rick.
Well, in case you need to know, I think I appreciate knowing that.
I mean, how many people's nickname is also their name?
It is a fascinating fact, though. Something else about going briefly back to Brian James. So there's another. You ever have one of those moments where you're like, I'm the first human being on planet Earth to ever think this? I was watching Tango and Cash, which classic Stallone Kurt Russell movie, and I'm watching, enjoying it fine. Then this guy comes up, and my mind goes, "Oh, that's the villain in Dead Man Walking." And not a single other human being has ever thought that before, because I'm sure they thought of like Blade Runner or something else that he was in. But I was like, no, Dead Man Walking. Oh yeah, I know him.
That's the shortest road to any cultural reference.
That's what's weird. Is like there's genuinely like working genuine character other actors in this film for this, which is fascinating to me.
Because obviously I watch a lot of horror for this podcast, so sometimes it's kind of nice to watch something that's not strictly horror. It's something that's a little bit different. Something I found interesting as well, more interesting than Rick Marx's IMDb, is that a lot of his credits are also pornos, which is interesting because until recently, I never really thought of porno films having screenwriters.
Right.
Like, I just always assumed that maybe the plot was kind of secondary and that there was just probably a lot of improv, like a Judd Apatow movie.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of thought put into these pornos. You have to give them credit there.
Also, what's weird is that for some of his projects, he is credited with a female name.
Interesting.
So for some of his projects, and some of them are pornos, he is credited as Maria Lemans.
Oh, that's wonderful. See, it's like all the outside things around this movie that make it weirdly special to me. Like the fact that it's all it's made out of porno money. It's starring all these kind of awkward character actors who are in weird points in their careers. It's like a movie that's never been properly released. It's like the best copy we have is a VHS tape scan that's on YouTube for free. It's not even worthy of Tubi's restoration. It's truly powerful stuff, and that's why it's higher up for me on the Jeffrey Combs scale. Yeah,
you sort of, I guess, feel a bit like an archivist when you're
absolutely
when you're saving these things. It's like it may not be in the upper echelons of what is considered high art, but this is still a part of our film history, and it must be preserved. Something I noticed about the Dead Man Walking IMDb credits, which I think show on the closing credits rather than the opening ones, is how many people are credited under a different name, but they're not wildly different. It seems like a lot of people just had their name misspelled.
Oh, that's amazing.
Because most of the people's names, it's their name with something slightly different. So for instance, Jeff, in the closing credits, not in the opening credits, he's billed as Jeffery.
Oh my god.
So Jefffery. And then there's other people who it's just very one letter or a space is different.
No one was saying these porno screenwriters and editors were good screenwriters and editors. They're just working stiffs. They're trying their best out here.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Is it? I don't know.
I never noticed that. That's amazing.
Just a weird little thing, because I know that sometimes people use a different name if they don't want to be associated with a film, like Alan Smithy, that sort of thing. But this just seems like a lot of people just had their name spelled wrong. Otherwise, if you didn't want to be associated with it, why wouldn't you just have a completely different name?
Well, it's like a 1-2 punch for Jeffrey Combs, especially because, as I said earlier, it's he's credited at the very end. It's like Reanimator. I don't know if you ever heard I'm sure you have, the commentary track when they're all watching Reanimator and Jeff's like, oh, we have to wait for my name. It's at the end. And it happened again for Dead Man Walking. And then really to just pour salt in the wound, it's we're not even going to spell your name right at the end either. It's fuck you. You're in Dead Man Walking. This is all you get. You're not going to be on the poster. You're not going to be. He's not on the DVD or the DVD. There's not even DVD. There's not even VHS. They don't even have his name on the cover of the VHS. He's not in this movie unless you watch it, and he's the main part of the movie.
Well, I feel that way about Felony. He's the main character, and he's not on either of the fucking posters.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, and I mean it. He's never phoned in a performance in anything I've ever seen him in, which again he really should have for many of them, including perhaps this movie. But that's why he's such a good actor. It's he takes every role just as seriously as the other one. And I guess you also have to keep in mind it's not when he says this a lot to himself. When he was filming Reanimator, he was not filming it oh, this is gonna be some iconic movie. If anything, it was probably kind of similar to, maybe not to the level of Dead Man Walking, but a little similar in terms of this is some low budget movie that I'm just doing as the start of my acting career, and we'll see where it goes. He didn't think it was going to be some iconic film. So maybe Dead Man Walking was the same in his mind. It could get big.
I can't wait for the Dead Man Walking renaissance where it comes back as a cult hit.
It's actually, you're saying that as a joke, but I noticed recently that there's some weird queers on Tumblr.com who are starting to notice it, which I think is interesting because they're noticing it's a little homoerotic, which I wouldn't disagree with. It's mildly tinged with homoeroticism. Yeah, no, I've noticed it's starting to gain a little audience there.
More people that see it, the more people that see Jeff. It's I'm just further indoctrinating people into this cult.
Right.
All right, so Dead Man Walking starts with a scrolling text, which just lets us know that basically there was a worldwide epidemic. Corporations divide the world into plague zones where the healthy can live freely, but the sick have to stay in these zones. A group of plague survivors emerge called the Zero Men, who have a non-contagious but still fatal form of the plague. And then, the sort of lead in is, with knowledge of their impending death, their behavior was sometimes erratic.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it just? Yeah, so one of the bars that you mentioned that we spend a lot of time in, people are playing these like insane and dangerous games like Russian roulette with a chainsaw, which
Mm-hmm.
is just one of those things where like you say it as like maybe a gag even, but
Right.
you say it and it's like, oh, actually that is ridiculous. Like that we have to have that in our film. That's absurd.
Yes. Which is why I'm like, I kind of think there's a lot of really good ideas in this movie. Like, as absurd as that is, I kind of do love it that they're like, all these guys are like, oh, we're all gonna like die soon, so let's just play all these games like 24. Like, literally, that's all they do in this bar. There's like 24/7 little games of like, let's see if I kill myself with this game or I kill you. It's beautiful.
Yeah. There's these weird saw traps up on the walls. And
Yes,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I feel like with a little bit more budget, I feel like this could have like looked really sick. Because,
right.
Yeah, a lot of interior shots in this movie show you just how kind of cheap it is. Whereas, like, exterior shots, I think they were filming in, like, oil fields or something, which is why everything looks, messy. Like, those look fine because I think they did well to make it look like a sort of dystopian wasteland. Yeah, the interior shots, it's like you're reminded, oh, yeah, this is very low budget. Jeff is playing Chaz, or Charles, but Chaz. People call me Chaz. Who is the chauffeur of I think a property developer, it seems. And his 20-year-old daughter, Layla, they're driving through or around or near these plague zones. And Layla's like, wants to like see the freaks and stuff. Like she's like gawking at them, which is funny because it's kind of like that sort of immediately makes the character unlikable.
Right.
So
with this character we're really supposed to care about a lot. And she's immediately like a terrible person. It's an interesting choice, huh?
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not immediately worried about this person's welfare. Jeff has like a bunch of gray in his hair, which is quite a fun look. He's also got, I can't tell what it is. Has he got like, he's got these marks on his face.
Yeah, I've always wondered that. I is it because of like the pills he's taking, or was it because he got in a fight earlier? I have no idea. They're really prominent in certain shots.
Yeah, it kind of just looks like freckles.
Yeah, just some weird makeup choice.
He's always wearing these like leather gloves as well, which is very Dammers.
Yeah, and he's like constantly fidgeting with them the entire movie. I noticed that. He's like got the tightest slacks known to man. I was like, what is this man wearing? Like,
well, they're not tighter than the ones in Phantom Empire. So
nothing will ever get tighter than the pants in Phantom Empire. That was absurd that was allowed.
showing that movie at the Jeffrey Combs Film Festival. That was fun to see people's reaction to Jeff first appearing in that movie because
it's a jump scare.
But he's adorable and he's got these tiny little pants and this like fluffy hair, and he's like the heartthrob in that movie because all the girls want to fuck him and stuff. Obviously, we've talked about Phantom Empire on this podcast, but it was kind of nice. Like, he doesn't get to be, like, the love interest very often in films. So that was kind of fun.
He's even very rarely, like, a normal guy. It is one of the many charms of Phantom Empire. That's something that I find so interesting about this movie, too, is I don't know if you ever heard Jeffrey Combs talking about From Beyond, where he's really... Like, to this day, he's still annoyed about how, like, passive and a victim he was as Crawford From Beyond. Like, he's so butthurt over the fact that he's, like, not like the main one in charge of the action in that movie. He's like, I'm just like, I don't do anything. I'm running around. I'm scared. And I'm like, that's half of your roles. That's Dead Man Walking. Again, it's like peak pathetic and Dead Man Walking. He's like peak, like I could toss that man across the room so easily. He's manhandled every second. Like it's absurd. And like From Beyond's the one where he's really upset about.
Like obviously a lot of From Beyond is him being sort of scared. But then a lot of it is also him being aggressive.
Yes.
As a, monster, sort of,
He has way more going on and way more action that ends up being more heroic than in anything in, like, a film like Dead Man Walking or something like that. He's like, his voice is cracking in Dead Man Walking. He's nervous as hell. He's sweating like crazy. He doesn't know where he is. Like, it's crazy.
And fundamentally, From Beyond... Like, he gets to do one of the best things an actor gets to do in that movie, which is make out with Barbara Crampton. What are you complaining about, buddy?
Right. I know.
All right, we keep getting distracted from talking about dead men walking.
Which is so crazy because there's so much going on in Dead Man Walking. It's a mild minute entertainment, which is how we distracted from it.
There's so much happening. All right, so our villains are a bunch of prisoners who they're being transported, and they kill the guards that escape, head into the plague zone. The head of this operation is a guy called Decker, played by. So you pronounce? Did you pronounce it Brian? How do you pronounce it?
I think it's Brian James. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Because it's Brian with an O. I was going to pronounce it Brian. Brian?
That could fully be right. I don't know. Guy in Blade Runner and Tango and Cash.
And The Fifth Element as well.
Yes, of course.
He's got a good crazy face.
Oh, absolutely. He looks insane in this film.
The convicts attack Chaz and the boss man. Boss man is killed immediately. Leela's kidnapped. Layla.
You gloss over a really important part, which is when Jeffrey Combs is trying to move a body from the road, and he like immediately stumbles over. Like he can't even move him like a little bit. It's I've never seen him this weak before. It's incredible. It's a highlight of the film.
I like the idea that there wasn't meant to be like that, because obviously the next day Layla's like, "Dad, help him."
Yeah.
I like the idea that was like. It was like written that the character was like meant to move the body, and then Jeff was like, "No, dang it!"
Yeah, the dad's even like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" He like gets out of the car. It's awesome. That's a good part.
Come on, Jeff. Chaz tries to get help from the cops. The cops don't want to go into the plague zone, so Chaz heads to the weird death bar looking for quote someone special. That phrase is used a couple of times. I don't know what is meant to be special about the someone special. Turns out to be Luger, played by Wings Hauser. Like. I don't know what's meant to be special about him necessarily. Like he's very brave when he's playing all these like weird Russian roulette games.
Sorry, as one character points out to us, there is a Luger, like the gun, when they're showing Jeffrey Combs. In case you didn't know what his name was based off, they tell you in the script. It's very clever, and it gives you a lot about his character.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There's just so many little parts of the movie that are like that. I'm like, thank you for letting us know. I was myself.
This movie's smarter than I thought. I do also appreciate that the insane bar full of dangerous suicidal freaks is playing constantly free jazz.
Yeah. Fascinating.
That bar. Yeah, like, you know what really gets people G'd up to like play death games is like blaring trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
So Chaz and Luger meet. Luger decides to help rescue Leela after he makes Chaz hold this like active time bomb. That is, as you mentioned, very fun, nervous Jeff time. That's literally the note I made was nervous Jeff time.
So what can I do for you? We were in the plague zone. They killed Mr. Sean. His daughter, they abducted her. How are we doing on this?
What do you need from me?
To get the girl. From Decker.
Decker?
Yeah. How are we doing?
He's got like cartoon sweat beads coming off of his head at that part. It's incredible stuff.
Sometimes he reminds me of like I don't know what you know when you watch like say an old movie or maybe a cartoon where there's like a gangster and then there's like the gangster's flunky. There's always like, yeah, I'll get it right away for you, boss. You know?
Absolutely. That's like the best way to describe him in this movie. He also looks, he always looks small, but he looks like the smallest he's ever looked in his life next to Wings Hauser, especially when they're sitting next to each other. It's like bringing your, it's like a little kid that's like sit up at the bar next to like an adult man. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Bring your kid to work day. Yeah.
Absolutely. To that crazy S&M murder bar.
So Decker is like obsessed with Leela. There's this whole scene where he like cuts his hand grabbing a knife off someone else, and he keeps like making these lines of blood on both of their hands, and then when he does eventually like kiss her and make out with her, it's the worst kissing I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
It's so grotesque. Like it's not even that it's sloppy or anything. There's just there's something off about it. I'll post just that scene on socials, and you guys can let me know if I'm like projecting or if it's genuinely unsettling.
No, and it's made even worse by the fact that it goes on for so long. It's like it's a big long lead up to that kiss, and they had all that time to prepare for it to not be that. Grotesque is the word. It's pretty vile stuff. And what's weird is it's almost framed like it's kind of sexy or something. It's like some of the most erotic that the film gets, and it's so not erotic, which makes complete sense considering I do kind of have a background of watching some of Gregory Darkseid movies. His erotic stuff isn't erotic at all, so he couldn't even shoot porn properly. So that makes complete sense.
I've forgotten her name, but the actress playing Layla, I don't know if they just didn't write motivations for her or if she couldn't necessarily convey them. I haven't seen her in anything else. I don't know what kind of an actor she is. Judging from this, I don't think she's that great. Because judging by some of the actions she does in the film, I could never get a read on whether she was, learning to accept her fate and kind of going along with Decker, or if she was, trying to fight and get away. Like I never quite figured out what that was. Even by the end, I was like, well, she did that, but did she mean it?
They had no idea what to do with any of the women in this movie. Yeah. I also this is about her too. It's like obviously the big thrust of the whole movie is Jeffrey Combs is trying to find Layla and he keeps saying he's like, I care for her. It's because I care. He never says love, and like the most we ever get is like her limo driver just like smiling at her in the window, and you're like, oh, he's in love with her. Okay. So that's love. That's like the character establishment we get.
We do also find out that she's 20. Like she makes a point of saying that she's 20. So it's like, okay, so it's not creepy because she's 20.
Right.
And I guess, Jeff's character is meant to be like in his 30s, I suppose. I guess he would have been in real life in his 30s if this was 88. Only a few years after Reanimator. As I said, Brian James is really good at this. He's very good at giving himself this sort of troubled, faraway look of just an absolute madman. Chaz and Luger go to this place looking for Decker that is a very odd combination of professions. It is a body counting facility that also has canned goods. And it is implied that the canned food is the dead bodies. Mm-hmm. And they don't dig very deep into that either.
No, and it's literally a conveyor belt of like just dead people laying there, and he's like 18, 19. It's like it just awkwardly like it's not like actually automatic, of course, because they don't have any money making this movie, so it's just like they're awkwardly pushed into like the ether or whatever. It's really good stuff in that scene.
Yeah.
Completely unexplained. It's just there. It's just a different set to have, and it's like interesting, I guess.
I guess it's part of the satire of like, what would we do? What would make this plague-ridden dystopia even worse is if the bodies were being eaten, and it's like, well, you wouldn't eat a plague body though.
Right.
Like that's not
thought into it. There's like, let's eat them. Even though there's zones specifically for designating like, oh, you can't be anywhere near these other people. But we can't eat them though. It's fine.
I guess in this universe, like there's the idea that there are the safe zones and the plague zones. So it's like surely food is still being manufactured in the safe zone. So it's like so the safe people aren't eating them. And I guess the canned food is for like the plague victims because you can't get plague twice.
Again, to quote a Letterboxd user, and this is like my favorite review of the film of all time. It's like, this movie would be so good if it was good, because I think there's a lot of ideas that are almost interesting or almost like fun, and they kind of are. But then if you think about it for even 1 second, like this, for instance, it just completely falls apart immediately. So it's something to go quickly back to the news segments. I really like the like suicide kit part. Like that's fun. Like when they're talking about like, oh, there's like replacement do it yourself suicide kits coming back, they'll be restored in 24 hours, and like the top guy's like, that is good news. So
eventually they catch up with Decker, but obviously Luger, he's having to fight the fight on his own. Chaz isn't a huge amount of help in this instance, so they bury them up to their necks in dirt.
Yeah.
And the thing I always think of in the few things that I've seen this in, how do you film this? Do you actually just have to bury the actors in dirt?
Right.
Because it really just looks like they're buried in dirt. It doesn't look like it's not a green screen. This is
no.
So I don't. How do you film this in a cheap way, aside from just burying people up to their necks in dirt?
Yeah, they're like, look, Jeff, you're not even on the main building. Get in that dirt. You're just getting in the dirt. We're burying you up. Wings House, are you getting there too? That's I think I think they literally just were buried. They didn't do any fancy trickery there. It's like, just get in the dirt. Get in the dirt.
Get in the dirt, little pig boy.
See, there's so much effort put into this movie. They actually got in there. They got dirty. It was all for this incredible film.
That's a good trick for a low budget movie. You don't need a lot of money to dig a hole and put Jeffrey Combs in it.
Right. That's also, I thought it was funny you mentioned earlier, like, well, the actual, like, all like the plague zone stuff like that looks like pretty good from like, background like set, but it's just a low budget thing of like, oh, like there's like no permits if we just shoot out here in the middle of nowhere in like a desert. So of course it looks good. And then any of the actual sets look like they're falling apart at the seams. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
The sets are all they're filmed in a way where you're not meant to notice how little furniture is in the room.
The smallest bars I've ever seen.
Yeah. This isn't a particularly funny film, but I did laugh at this.
Good afternoon.
Looks like somebody got the jump on you. I heard tell there were some desperate fugitives in the area. Looks like you boys are entangled with the wrong party.
Have you got a shovel?
Yeah?
Well, could you get it?
Yeah, that part's great.
Yeah.
There's tiny nuggets of goodness. Trying to defend dead man walking. Fighting for my life.
This is the hill you're gonna die on. Look, there's a couple of little moments like that are meant to be comedic, and then some that are sort of kind of funny because they're not meant to be comedic. But a lot of the times when Jeff is at his most nervous and squirrely, that's when it is quite funny.
Oh, absolutely.
So the stranger that saves them takes in Chaz and Luger. Chaz has these plague pills that he takes because he had the plague once and now he doesn't, but he needs to like stave it off. Future reasons. I don't know. So they trade Chaz's plague pills to the stranger for a car and the stranger's sister Pookie. I don't know why they take her.
No idea.
They didn't want her. They weren't like, give us a woman. The stranger was just like, take her. I think that maybe Luger thought that Pookie really liked Chaz.
I think there's it's that, and I think they had some line of like, she's a good cook, and they're like, we'll take her, and it's like there's no other. That's all it is.
Yeah,
yeah. It's especially weird too, considering the whole point of the plot is like trying to get this woman who was kidnapped, and they're like, oh well, Chaz can get this woman. If it was like a properly made movie, maybe it could show his deep love for Layla or something. But really, there's only a line was like, sorry, I care about Layla, and that's it, and that's like all there is.
Chaz has to like pre-break up with Pookie, like around a fire, where she's like, oh, you don't like me, and he's like, oh, I care for someone else, and it's like oddly sad.
Jeffrey Combs, like, I mean, again, in a lot of his movies, I'd say he doesn't come across entirely as heterosexual as I think he'd like to, but this this is another case of that, because like even with this, I mean, this happens a little bit after this when Pookie's trying to like make moves on Chaz, but like right before that, when they're like around the fire, Jeffrey Combs is like, hey, Luger, wait, I thought we were going to shoot the breeze. And he's like, we shot it. And he just leaves. And I'm like, what was that? What, like, he said it really specific, like, shoot the breeze. It's like he's implying something that we don't know. And yet.
Yeah. I thought we were going to, like really get into it, like really like unpack some stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Find out more about each other. Yeah.
Exactly. By the fire in the desert. Many such cases,
But then they wake up the next morning. Well, Luger wakes up the next morning and sees that Chaz is just sitting there staring at Pookie, and she's dead. It's not clear how she died. I don't know if I missed the line.
No, I was hoping you would tell me what it was. I tried to figure that out too. She's just dead. She's just died. I
mean, obviously, like the crappy VHS copy is obviously not great that we watched. So unless there was something visually that they didn't mention that happened, like, I don't know, a mark on her head or something. As far as I'm aware, she died of a broken heart.
When Jeffrey Combs doesn't love you, your body just shuts down and you die. Again, many such cases. Yeah, no, it's bizarre. It makes me wonder if they were trying to go for something like a Logan's Run kind of thing, where that would actually be kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if you've seen Logan's Run, but like for anyone who may have not doesn't know, like in Logan's Run, like they actually have like a light on like their hands that indicates like their lifespan, because they all die at like 30. Or like they're forced to die rather at 30. Maybe it was something like that. Like she was, because I think the Zero Men are like, I think they say I have like 2 years or something left. So maybe that was the end of that 2 years for her, and she just died. We don't know. They don't care to tell us. She died of a broken heart.
That's how women in movies die.
Right. What was I thinking? Making it deeper than that.
So Chaz and Luger eventually go. They're looking for Deco at a place called Cafe Death. Apparently, it's like, the way they talk about this place, it's like this insane, violent bacchanalia of hedonism and blood and violence. And it honestly just seems like any like inner city burlesque bar.
Right.
Or like,
Just a couple weird queers just hanging around, some bikers and punks.
Yeah. And like, there's like a man with an umbrella inside and, people wearing like midriff tops. Like, this isn't weird, man. This just looks like an alternative comedy night.
Right.
There's like a hookah in the back. There's a mouse in a cage on the bar. None of this is weird.
One of the patrons does kind of visually remind me of like Butterball from Hellraiser. Like they just have like the same glasses and they're just like in the corner and they just kind of show them just like sitting there like that. I'm like, okay, that's a fascinating choice. And there's one of my all-time favorite characters in this Cafe Death, which is like this big ass like bear who has like a boob window shirt with chains. He's an incredible character.
I think the main thing that separates Cafe Death from other bars and alternative comedy nights is that the host literally sets a man on fire.
Yes. Nina Hagen, or like the knockoff Nina Hagen does that, which I think is fascinating.
She's like, look, I cover this man in gasoline.
Yeah.
And
no, like boo, like make it worse.
Yeah.
they want more carnage.
She really milks it though, because she douses this man who's just standing there in gasoline, and then she's holding a blowtorch, but she just kind of like traces his outline against the wall, which again, I don't know how covering someone in gasoline and holding a blowtorch that close to them didn't immediately set them alight. But then she's like, look, everybody, I did this. And they're all like, boo, set him on fire, obviously. And then she does. I don't think that would happen in even the coolest of alternative bars.
Yeah, and meanwhile, like Luger and Chaz are just like having awkward like small talk while drinking, and there's like a guy being lit on fire on stage. It's cinema is saved. It's a great scene.
They're just like, yep, that's the future for you.
Yeah, that's the plague zone.
I am going to make a GIF of nothing in particular here. I just really like the way Jeff slams a door and then sort of like stands very sassy outside of it. It's one of those things where in a regular film, there's no need for anyone to do it this way, but he does it this way. And when I post the GIF, you'll see why.
It kind of reminds me of, I think you've brought this up before too, and it's in Castle Freak when it's like, we're here in the castle, and he like does that like big like turnaround, and it's just like such like theater acting all of a sudden out of nowhere. It's like he has to slam that door really intensely, and that part's great too because that's in reaction to that boob window shirt bear that I just brought up earlier, because he goes up to Luger and he's like, wants to play one of these like death roulette games, and he's like, yeah, sure. And Jeffrey Combs is immediately like a jealous housewife. He's like, Luger, come back here. And he doesn't, and he goes back to playing with this other dude. And Jeffrey Combs almost breaks the entire set by how hard he slams that door in anger.
And then just sort of pouting outside of the venue.
It's amazing stuff.
That's the thing. When you watch as many Jeffrey Combs movies as I have, and I'm sure you have also, although to be honest, I reckon I'm beating you because I reckon I'm beating most people.
I gave up on certain things a long time ago.
I mean, I'm a completionist, and so I think I have seen everything now.
You're a historian.
Yeah.
That's what you are. Yeah.
I'm a historian. I'm an expert in my field. Yeah, there's literally I think 2 movies I haven't seen, but that's because they're like impossible to get.
Right.
Like I haven't been able to find a shred of them. I even for one of them I even emailed the filmmaker and I was like, please.
And he's like, what movie? Oh yeah.
I think someone's got that. I think someone's got that somewhere. But yeah, I think one day I will make a supercut of the various times that Jeff is needlessly sassy.
Oh yeah. And also manhandled. I brought it up earlier, but it's probably an upper echelon manhandling movie for Jeffrey Combs. Even Wings Hauser, like this is during that scene where he's like, Luger, like get back here. He like grabs him by the scruff like of his shirt. He's like, listen, I think he calls him like I don't know if it's there's a scene where he calls him a weasel. I don't remember if it's that part, but maybe that part, but it's wonderful.
It definitely reminds me of someone made a supercut of every time Jeff is like manhandled or pushed around in Reanimator, but every time he makes like a squeaky noise like a toy.
Someone did that in response to something I said. I was like,
Oh.
thank you for putting the effort there. I was like, I'm not gonna make that, but then someone's like, I got it. I was like, thanks, man. It's really
Amazing,
important.
yeah. So they find Leela in Decker's car outside. Decker tortures Luger eventually by attaching him to like car battery,
Yeah.
and then like revving the engine, which is pretty intense.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild for this, because like this movie hasn't been super violent. Most people have been just like shot.
Considering the premise, it's pretty tame on all fronts until like random bursts like this. And again, it's kind of like that I don't know what we want to call that, like dark romance kidnapping kind of scene we were talking about earlier that was really grotesque. Like they hold on it for so long. Like it's so long of Wings Howard's getting tortured and Decker just like laughing, and just close with him just continuously laughing.
Eat it up, baby.
Yeah.
And Chaz is just like somewhere nearby during all of this, presumably watching, maybe plotting. Who's to say? There is quite an emotional moment though when Chaz thinks that Luger is dead, and Luger sort of like wakes up and says he doesn't want to die, and then Chaz is like stroking his head in his face, and it's really lovely. And then like we cut to obviously some time has passed, and Chaz is like guarding Luger's body while he sleeps.
Yeah,
like he's like standing or sitting guard, like watching, like not watching but watching out for danger. Yeah, right. While Luger like rests. It's quite nice.
It is. I also think it's funny because I know in that scene Decker is in a like when Chaz gets there, like Decker's obviously in the car doing the torturing, but like all I ever think is like wait in that car for like a second. And then when Decker gets out of the car, if I'm like a little guy and I can't fight this dude, I'm running him over with my car. And that never don't show this guy in a car, and that could really help him, stop all this. Like I'm not like a CinemaSins guy, but I just think it's funny. It's like just run him over.
Chaz does eventually like I think it's maybe before that scene, but there is a bit where Chaz is in the car and he goes to drive away. He doesn't try to run over Decker. No. He just tries to drive away, and Decker immediately shoots the tires out.
Yes.
And so Chaz ends up like crashing like 20 feet from where he left. It was pointless, Chaz. What are you doing? The note that I have about Chaz standing vestry over Luger is good husband.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So when they find Layla, she attacks them and like flees, which again is kind of like, it confused me about her motivations. But then Chaz is stabbed and she goes to him to like comfort him. Chaz tells Luger as his sort of like last moments that there actually has been a cure for the plague for like 5 years, but it's been held up by bureaucratic red tape.
It's that political commentary that we were all looking for from this pornographer-made movie. That's what we were looking for. It's really effective stuff. I did see some people, and I've been on this kind of argument before with like bad 80s movies arguing that they're deeper than they are, but I heard some people kind of saying like it's like an AIDS metaphor. I'm like, I don't really know if we should be saying that about Dead Man Walking. I'm not saying it's not completely unwarranted, and obviously it was during the AIDS crisis, so that's fair. But also I'm like, for Dead Man Walking, I don't know, like,
I guess it's similar in the sense of like it is a major health crisis that the government ignored to benefit itself, and obviously like it was a big fan of like segregating people based on like health crisis and stuff. So there's a lot of films that came out of like the AIDS crisis that were like a pretty direct metaphor for it, if not directly about it. But I think nowadays I looked at this and thought COVID, like
exactly.
It didn't even occur to me to think about AIDS because like COVID is obviously like pretty fresh in the memory, and there was a lot of similarities.
Exactly. I first watched this at the thick of COVID, so that was all I could think of all the time. I was like, wow.
I think in between lockdowns, I watched Contagion, which is another Jeffrey Combs film. That's the one where he's Irish.
Oh, amazing.
So Leela kills Decker in the end. She does shoot him. So
girl boss.
Good. Even though she has had like 3 lines in a 90-minute movie, despite being like the main motivation for the characters.
Right.
And then Luger takes her, to the cops to get her sorted out, and they in turn are going to take Chaz to the hospital because he's fine. He's not dead. Don't worry. Finally,
Yeah.
Jeffrey Combs doesn't die in a movie.
You know that young thug tweet that's like, I hate it when girls die. I'm like that, but it's like, I hate it when Jeffrey Combs survives. I'm like the opposite. I know every other Jeffrey Combs fan's like, yay, I hate when he dies in Reanimator Bride. I'm like, no, I think it's the funniest thing ever. I think it's so funny that he dies twice in that franchise. Like,
Yeah.
but I do like how like this woman who we've barely seen, who's been like the victim of the whole movie, she's like carrying Jeffrey Combs' frail body to like help at the end of the film. That's wonderful to me.
This 20-year-old girl, he's leaning on
Yeah.
him for help. Yeah. Jeffrey Combs at the end of Reanimator is kind of like what they had to do with the Insidious films, where the first Insidious film had Lynn Shay in it. We love Lynn Shay.
Mhm.
And everyone else does, because she was so good in that movie, she was so good at it, she was kind of a standout in that movie. So then if they wanted to make any sequels, because spoiler alert, she dies at the end of Insidious 1, every film after that had to be a prequel or like some imagining, because they couldn't bring her back. Same with Reanimator. They got to the end of it and then they're like, fuck, we killed Herbert at the end. How can we figure out a way that he didn't actually die?
Let's shoot a scene explaining it and not include it in the movie. Brian Yuzna's, directorial vision, it really is understated in film for just decisions that are as baffling as that, you know? One of the many Bride of Reanimator baffling moments, which I love, genuinely.
Oh, obviously. That's pretty much the end. There is a bit where Luger tells Chaz, "You're done good."
Thanks, buddy. And he's like, yeah, you done good. And I just go off into the sunset. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like Luger did most of the work.
He didn't do anything. Chaz didn't do a single thing.
You expect that Luger's going to be the brawn and Chaz is going to be the brains.
Right.
You know. And then, Chaz doesn't really do much to be the brains of the operation. He doesn't have the skill set, but that's okay. He's moral support, I guess.
Right. He doesn't do any action really himself in the entire film. It really just is more important as another entry of like the Jeffrey Combs stumbling down a hill like a newborn fawn, like Phantom Empire. That's the only other thing this movie gives us. He does do that in this movie, and that part's wonderful. That's what he's providing to the team. He can't walk down a hill.
Although, because like obviously in terms of the various supercuts that I'm constantly creating in my mind, one of them was obviously stumbling down a hill in that way. Unfortunately, there's nothing in this film to add to my various weird ways that Jeffrey Combs sits supercut that I put in my.
He's giving bisexuals a run for their money in terms of weird ways to sit. Like he's cornered the market in that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. One of the projects I think I need to work on is just sort of a visual collage of various Jeff sits, or I could get other hobbies.
Well, there's also too, I just remembered one other scene that's important. We mentioned it, but not the specific part. Another great gif, I guess, is when Layla breaks out of the car and she like immediately like tackles Jeffrey Combs to the ground when she like that's what I use that all the time in my personal life. Just like I just think it's so bizarre. It's almost like she glomps him or something. Like
it's reasonably full on, and I know that Jeff has said that he does like to do his own stunts from time to time, and I do like the idea of him just being thrown around like that. It's
just swing him around. That's what he's there for. That's what he's getting paid for, baby. It's the marvels that you can make when you have a career of only pornography until this point. This was like he made it such a point, and the minimal research that I did, he was like, this is my first big movie, and it was Dead Man Walking, which we can only all aspire to,
Hey, have you made Dead Man Walking? No.
Exactly.
So...
And not many people can say that, No. Have you made new wave hookers? Come on.
And I never will.
I did watch that one only because of the title. I was like, so am I, truly. I am also a new wave hooker, so I need to watch that. So
is it at all new wave, or is it just a title?
Yeah. I mean, it sucks, but like it is genuinely like new wave themed. I think he's kind of like a ripoff of Rinse Dreams, who is also like responsible for a bunch of like weird avant-garde pornos that are like actually really weird and interesting. The most like accessible film that's like adjacent, but it's not like full porn, is Dr. Caligari. If anyone wants to check that out, if anyone wants to watch some art house porno, here's my recommendations. But yeah, no, I think Dead Man Walking is his best work from what I've seen. Take with that what you will. But like at least there's like fun ideas in Dead Man Walking. At least they're ripping off fun things like RoboCop. In Death Falls, it's just like It's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening.
Yeah.
I can't stress how little is going on in Death Falls. And Dead Man Walking, again, I feel like there's like a skeleton of a good, like maybe like a, even like a little bit of an edit. Make it a little shorter. Let's get a higher quality version up. Maybe these things can, I'm not saying we're getting a great movie. I'm just saying we're going to get something that's in the Jeffrey Combs, it's maybe a little higher in the echelon than some would expect. I'm throwing in a little bone. just a little.
What we need is a rich, eccentric philanthropist who will fund a very specific archiving / digitization project for the films of Jeffrey Combs. Taking all of these shitty VHS rips of things, getting them real high quality, maybe putting them into like a big like mini streaming service of its own.
Right. I forget the details of because I know like the version of Evil Clergyman we have is like they could barely get that. It's like genuinely the best we got right now, and the rest may be like the actual film may be just gone at this point. I don't remember all the details of that. That's like the ultimate like archivist's goal is to get that as high quality as possible. 4K release of Evil Clergyman is what I'm getting at here. Somehow.
Well, I mean, look, of all the films, you know, I could definitely stand to see that one clearer, you know, just looking at it with like my eyeballs like touching the screen. Like,
yeah, for purely innocent reasons. I think that it's just for the sake of film preservation, film history. There's no ulterior motives here. I simply am just interested in, again, the preservation of the art form, the best versions of films we can get.
Yeah,
it's like the Bride of Reanimator Fellatio stuff that they have, like the VHS tapes. I'm just an archivist. I'm thinking that needs to be public record. There's nothing weird going on there.
I'm just asking questions.
Brian Yuzna just brought it up himself for no reason. No one asked him that specifically. No one thought that happened. He just thought he'd let us know. Which, thank you. I appreciate knowing that. Show it, release it.
It's good
go
to know
to your
it's
attic.
out.
Yeah,
go
rummage through your attic
somewhere. Yeah.
I've never had such a eureka moment than when I saw. I mean, other people noticed it too. I'm not going to take full credit or anything like that. But when Brian Yuzna posted that, and I was like, wait a minute, they literally talked about this subtly, but they talked about this in the Bride of Reanimator commentary. Yeah. I know what's going on here. It's big cover up. it's my one conspiracy.
Yeah, it's all a shadowy plan by big blowjob.
Yeah, it's a Reanimator cabal. That's it's happening here. Yeah, crazy.
But yeah, that's Dead Man Walking. I think that there's like a news clip at the very end that says that the news anchors, they come and tell us that Luger went to the head office place, like I guess the government sort of thing, and stole the information about the cure that they had been hiding from them. I don't know if that means he stole the actual cure or just the files, because I think he released them to journalists to reveal the government's shadowy activities.
He's a revolutionary.
We love an anarchist king. You know, he found like purpose in life, which was to take down the government, which we love.
Again, if this movie had any money, that could be kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, because they don't show that happening. They have to just tell you because.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like just a little, like. It just a little more pocket change in this movie. It could have been kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, it's also not a terribly good script. Like it's quite a boring script. The
screenwriter went, "Oh, well, Paul Verhoeven's a pervert, and so am I. So I can be just like Paul Verhoeven. I can just straight up copy Paul Verhoeven, take his actor even, and it'll be fine."
This is all Verhoeven does. He just gets a couple of guys and puts them on a little journey. Some people get shot. Although, obviously the Paul Verhoeven's dystopias are usually a little bit more high tech. This one's a bit more like Mad Max, where everything's like dirty, low tech, because and like everyone's just like got like guns and knives.
Which is so convenient for the budget, It's like, we can't afford all that high tech, so they just have like guns and stuff.
Like, because how everyone in the Mad Max universe somehow has the knowledge to like build a car or whatever.
Yeah.
This is the world.
They're all engineers. In Mad Max.
And like scientists and shit who can build a gun that shoots smaller guns or something. This is the Mad Max universe where nobody has that knowledge.
Right. That's such a good point. Yeah, they're like not doing anything with what they have.
Yeah, they're just kind of dumb and very like cynical because they know that they're going to die soon. So they're like, "What's the point of doing anything? What's the point of making a gun when I'm going to die soon?"
Right. Again, you gotta lean in more into that nihilism. And we brought this up earlier, and obviously I'm not like, you know what film needs? We need to sexualize women more. But it's just crazy to me that given especially the background, everyone involved in this, and like there are women in this movie, and this is like a shitty, like made for VHS like movie. Why is there like no sex in this movie? Why is there like nothing like a sex scene, but I'm like, why is there nothing like slightly sexual where you think like that would be like any form of sell, especially if it's like, oh, this guy previously made porn, like, oh, that's why these like, you know, kind of slimy dudes in the 80s would be like, oh, I'll rent Dead Man Walking. Like, what is the appeal for this movie, except if you're a Jeffrey Combs fan in 2020s? You're like, oh yeah, this movie's great.
Even then.
Right. Even then, it's debatable.
I think that he just really wanted to make just like straight movies. He was just trying to make like an action sci-fi. And I think he was like, if I put tits in this, it's gonna
distract.
People are gonna think it's trashy.
I mean, obviously, the bigger issue is give your woman character like any agency at all, or a character. That's a start. But I just mean like if I'm putting on my like hat of just fully scuzzy 80s director. Or even like producers actually better. I'm like, why are there no women being like sexy in this movie? I don't know. Again, I'm not like saying like I promote the over sexualization of women in cinema. I just mean it's such a bizarre anomaly of a movie, especially given the people who made it. You think that's what it would be, but no. Yeah, I think you're right. He's like, no, I'm making art here. This is a film.
Very surprising.
It's not a movie. It's a film. And they wouldn't do that. Even though, again, we're literally homaging for like half the movie, a guy who would 100% do that. Paul Verhoeven loves nothing more than to do that. But they're like, no, we're not like that.
But also, like, I don't know, when they go into these like insane, the zero bar that we made at the start, it's mostly the men who are doing like the death games and stuff, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like women aren't even really engaging in that either.
Right.
So they're not really doing anything. Because I think at the start, we see that Luca has a girlfriend. She keeps complaining she's talking at the start about how she wants him to take her to Hawaii,
Completely missed that.
Yeah. She's like, why don't we go to Hawaii or what's left of it? And I'm like, so you can still travel in this universe? Like,
right. The whole intro is about like how like segregated the whole world is into these separate zones. And it's like, let's go to Hawaii. Fuck it.
Yeah. Oh, I need a vacation from the dystopia.
Right. It's like, well, I guess Wings Hauser now has a new girlfriend, which is Jeffrey Combs. So I guess it's like, yeah, just take her out. It's fine. She's got a replacement. It's okay. No, it is bizarre. I kind of forgot completely about his entire girlfriend at the start of the movie.
She does it very briefly, like they're talking, and then she gets up and goes somewhere, and Chaz sits in her seat. Yeah. And we don't see her again.
See, sits in her seat. See, it's actually it's all metaphoric. See, maybe these Tumblr people are onto something. It's all.
I've always said it.
every Jeffrey Combs project is secretly gay, according.
I get all of my cultural criticism from Tumblr. So, anything to plug?
I guess on Twitter I am the Gore Zone along with my Medium account and my Letterboxd, and on Instagram I'm Mondo Sleazo. So I'm really in the this is why I'm into Dead Man Walking, because there's Madame Mondo in his previous works, which doesn't make an appearance here, which is shocking. That could have really added flavor to the film.
Sometimes I'll have a thought where I'll be like, I'll be watching, like, let's say like a Jeffrey Combs movie, and I'll be like, he wore that jacket in that movie as well. That's weird. Why do I remember that? Like, who fucking cares? I forgot for a good half an hour yesterday how old I was.
But you can't remember the same like ascot that Jeffrey Combs has in Cyclone and Phantom Empire.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. The information that is held in my brain is of no use to anyone except in doing this podcast. It's not unpleasant.
You're doing a service to the community.
Well, I'm taking one for the team. I'm filling my head. My head is becoming the repository of information about Jeffrey Combs, so that I might donate it, to the world. When I die, I'm going to donate my brain to the Academy of Arts and Science.
I mean, like you're braver than most of us. I actually went on to see how many Jeffrey Combs movies I've watched. I've only watched like 32, which is that's the thing in the real world. It's like that's insane. I'm a lunatic for saying I've seen 32 Jeffrey Combs movies. But then I talk to like anyone on like twitter.com or like in a podcast, and it's like that's like amateur hour. It's like I'm not even watching Jeffrey Combs movies. I'm really behind.
Yeah.
I don't even watch Star Trek. Like that's how behind I am on the times. Yeah, it's actually it's so funny that we're doing this now because of the time that I've like been more of a like I've been a fan of Reanimator for like I don't know since like 2015 or something. But I was like normal. I just liked the movie and would like recommend it for a while. And then I just rewatched it in like 2020. My brain broke. Yeah, it was a specific kind of like brain rot that I had for like 2 or 3 years, and now I it's kind of like, I forget that post. It's like, I'm no longer a fan of Jimin because like I'm on medication and like have a job now or something. Do you remember that post?
Yeah. Yeah. It was someone who was like
or like
yeah, I'm not as big of a fan because I started taking like medication for my personality disorder.
Yeah. And nothing will ever go to like the dark times of like 2021 to around early 2023. I was in the Jeffrey Combs mines back then, deep. And now I'm kind of out for the most part. Like I dip my toe back in. And I'll always be there, kind of.
You were in a Jeff hole, or as I would call it, the catacombs.
Exactly.
That's really funny. I just came up with that. That's really good.
That should be the name of like the archivist collection, like the catacombs. No, just thank you for having me.
It's been a joy.
Have that on the record.